That's great. I think we're live. Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome to day one of Thriving in the Face of Cancer. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and every day for the next 30 days, I'll be talking to top doctors and other healthcare professionals, as well as people who have survived cancer, who will be giving you insights on how you too can thrive, even in the face of cancer. To kick off the series, we have an amazing guest who needs no introduction. He is a multiple New York Times bestselling author, host of several PBS specials, as well as the founder of the Eat to Live retreat in San Diego. Please welcome Dr. Joel Fuhrman. Happy New Year, Dr. Fuhrman, and thank you so much for doing this on a holiday.
My pleasure. Happy New Year to you and, of course, all your listeners.
Well, thank you. Dr. Fuhrman, I've interviewed you many times, but almost every time I've interviewed you, it's been about weight loss or food addiction because that's what I have been involved with many years. But now I'm kind of switching my gears and trying to help people not just survive cancer, but thrive regardless of what stage they're in. And I did not even know this. My sister had to tell me that you actually have a course, and it's called Combat Cancer and Autoimmune Disease. And it's available, and people can buy it anytime on your website. And I had no idea you had such a course. It's fabulous. I listened to it about 3 times, and I'd love to ask you some questions about some of the material in the course.
Sure. And, even though, I'm a board certified family physician taking care of a variety of diseases, and most people I've cared for over the years of my last 35 years of practice have been reversing diabetes and heart disease and autoimmune conditions. But I've seen many, many, many hundreds of people with diagnoses of cancer. And the outcomes, when we're using precision nutrition, the outcomes have been literally spectacular. And that's a big part of my practice now that I never thought that would happen this way. But in any case, what I'm saying right now and what I think that the nutritional science supports is that nutritional excellence and precision nutrition for people who have cancer has, you could say, better long-term outcomes when you compare it to chemotherapy, radiation, or conventional treatments. So we're saying that by ignoring or just doing conventional treatments, you're not getting the possibility you have to extend your life, to prevent, and of course, we're talking about not just putting a person in remission, but cancer can be a very slow-growing disease, and people could live 10, 15 years with cancer, and it's enjoying their life and preventing the cancer cells from replicating rapidly and taking that course. So we've seen people that have reversed their cancer, and we've seen people just dramatically extend their lifespan who utilize nutritional excellence and you could say precision supplementation geared towards their particular condition.
That's fantastic. You wrote a position paper called Preventing and Treating Cancer. Can you give us some of the highlights?
Well, and the position I've also published studies in medical journals with the outcome of some of these people with cancer that have had complete remission. Like, for example, I've had numerous people with metastatic ovarian cancer. One woman had 4 liters of metastatic ovarian cancer fluid in her lung, was given several months to live, but she's now alive 25, 27 years later. And that's just that one, but there's multiple people in that position who's thrived where we thought they had dismal outcomes. So yes, the position paper is showing that if we look at studies on certain food and herbs and substances, we find that these certain products like mushrooms, like flax seeds, like wheat germ, like curcumins from turmeric, we have these substances that show that they're protective against cells becoming cancerous. And the same studies that show that these things prevent cancer can actually create cancer remissions or people slowing cancer or be effective for people who have cancer. So the first thing we're talking about, the first key concept here, is the same dietary and supplemental factors that prevent cancer are also effective for people who have cancer. And we should also say that almost all people have cancer. Let me say that one more time, that most of us have had exposure to some cancer-causing elements in our lives that have hit the DNA to cause damage, to create cancer cells in our body. And then so many people, for example, who have breast cancer may recover from that breast cancer before it even can become a mass that can be seen on a mammogram. They may get cancer and have it go away again. So cancer cells come and go. And now scientists are estimating with new advances in cancer blood biopsying, or now we're seeing that probably the majority of adult Americans have cancer. So when you get a mammogram that detects cancer that's big enough to be seen by the human eye, it's been there probably 10 or 15 years. And now that we can detect those cancer cells in the blood, maybe 10 years before a mammogram can, we'll find that like 75 to 80% of women over the age of 65 have breast cancer. The question is really, it's not diagnosing these people with cancer. It's how should people live and how should we all live to keep our body living longer, enjoying our life, and keeping cancer cells in check. So that's one thing. We're talking about this protocol, we were talking about that, the position paper I wrote. And the position paper is to tell that how we live has a huge effect on our total lifespan with regard to heart disease, diabetes, dementia, and cancer. And we have a lot of control over that. However, cancer is unique. And this is why I wrote the book, Disease Proof Your Child. I was writing the book, Eat to Live, which was first published in 2004. So that means I'm writing this book about 20 years ago, right? And in reviewing 10,000 studies and picking out the best ones to reference in the book and trying to devise this book, I'm coming across a whole section of studies that show that what we do when cells are replicating as a child is the major cause of cancer, more so than what we choose to live as an adult. So I'm saying here that childhood exposure, childhood stress, childhood trauma, childhood exposure to chemicals, childhood exposure to radon or asbestos or arsenic or lead. Like, for example, living in LA as a child is a risk factor for lung cancer. And unfortunately, AJ, I'm sorry that you have this problem, but obviously a lot of people who live in LA are at high risk there because there was even a power plant, there was even a battery plant that was shut down in 2015 that exposed hundreds of thousands of people to higher levels of arsenics and lead. But in any case, what I'm saying right now is I wrote this book called Disease Proof Your Child because the evidence was accumulating that I collected. I couldn't put it into the book Eat to Live. I saved it for a later book, which is called Disease Proof Your Child, that showed that when the cells are growing and replicating, when we're growing as a child, and the younger we are, the faster our cells are replicating. And as cells are replicating and dividing, they open up their DNA, and they're more exposed to damage from cancer-causing elements in the environment. So even though cancer is not primarily a genetic-induced disease, it still has influences based on our childhood and even the exposure when we're living as an egg in the womb or before the egg is fertilized. So there's even cancer causation can damage the egg and create adult. We're not talking about the cause of acute blastocytic leukemia or brain tumors in children. We're talking now about adult cancers that people get at the age of 50, 60, and 70 years old, by the way. Has their major weight of their causation can occur when the person is in the first 10 years of life or first 15 years of life. So, and that's when so the question is now that, okay, I've had some cancer causing exposure. And that's why, of course, people, why living moderately healthy, I'm not really a big enthusiast of making baby changes and baby step changes. I want people to make more radical changes because we're not just dealing with preventing disease. We're talking about reversing damage that could have occurred earlier in life, right? And there's a lot of things, and obviously there's a lot of luck in the sense that how bad is the cell damaged is it in life? How many DNA crosslinks are broken? So we're talking here that it's not 100%, we're not dealing with 100% certainty, but we have to reduce our risk, live with what we have been exposed to, and do the best we can with the cards we're dealt. And in doing so, this is where devising precision nutrition for people who are at risk of cancer or who have cancer to allow their body to slow the replication and even reverse damage that could have occurred earlier in life. So that's what this is all about. By the way, my book, Disease Proof for Your Child, which talks about how childhood diets cause adult cancers, is my worst selling book. It did not become a New York Times bestseller like my other book. I have 7 New York Times best-selling books. But obviously, it's not necessarily a message people are that interested in and want to learn about. But I think it's really so brave of you and so important that you are coming out with this, coming out public with what's happened to you. And that now you could take what you've used and what to help other people and to benefit them both not just nutritionally, but psychologically and emotionally as well.
Oh, thank you very much, Dr. Fuhrman. I really appreciate that. And that's why it was so important for me to have you on. And I had no idea that living in LA was a risk factor for lung cancer. And I lived there till I was 60 years old.
Did you live your childhood in LA?
I moved there when I was 11. I lived in Chicago until I was 11. But the air was very bad. And that's one of the reasons I left as an asthmatic. I mean, once I left, it was so much easier to breathe.
Yes, that is a risk factor for lung cancer in particular, because lung cancer, people know that your risk of lung cancer is mostly in smokers, but 1%, about 1/10 of all lung cancers are people who never smoked, right? About 1/10. Your risk of getting lung cancer from smoking is about 10%. Your risk of getting lung cancer from never smoked is about 1%. But your risk does increase if you've had exposure to childhood pollution or childhood, smog, pollution, exposure, arsenic, lead, things like that. Living in inner cities obviously increases risk.
Yeah, and lung cancer doesn't get as much attention as breast cancer because of the stigma that it's only caused by smoking. And it's not true, because more and more people are being diagnosed with lung cancer. I'm learning through some of the people I'm interviewing, even young people who have never smoked.
Definitely,
Yeah.
yeah.
You always talk about the importance of, like, now you're calling it precision nutrition, but I always think about it as nutritional excellence. And I recently was in the Cancer Infusion Center of my local hospital, and they had a vending machine. And I bet you can imagine what was in the vending machine.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you know what I did is I took a picture, I posted it on social media, on Instagram and Facebook. I tagged Sutter Hospital and I said, you need to do better for your cancer patients. And they invited me to be on the nutrition advisory board.
That's cool. See
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. And, I mean, I don't mind so much that they're selling such unhealthy snacks. But when I had my lung biopsy and I hadn't eaten for 24 hours, and they finally, after my pneumothorax was stable, let me go home and I was hungry, all I could get was a turkey sandwich.
Wow.
Yeah, they said they didn't have any fruits or vegetables at this particular hospital, apparently. So,
Yeah, it's like
and
the hospitals with McDonald's in their lobbies, it's like
yeah, children's hospitals too.
medical care is complete divorce from nutrition. And I'm, of course, on the mission I'm not anti-medical care, but I want people to have a realistic viewpoint of what medical care could do compared to the more miraculous and effective treatments of nutritional excellence. And I use the word Nutritarian diet to describe this diet of nutritional excellence to maximize human longevity, but I use precision nutrition to modify the dietary and supplemental recommendations to be designed for a person's particularly unique situation, their condition, their disease, and their particular. So we're talking about using more precision nutrition to enable better outcomes, which modifies the diet further to match the particular condition. Like, we don't give a person with, let's say, a brain tumor the same diet we give a person with breast cancer, for example. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Does your nutritional recommendation vary depending on the type of cancer the person has and the stage of their cancer?
That's correct. Yes, it does. And the other issue is that if the cancer cells are suffocated sufficiently, that's the best avenue to live longer, is suffocate the cancer cells as the cancer cells get more aggressive, or as the cancer cells spread. So nutrition may be enough with an early stage prostate cancer and breast cancer, garden variety, estrogen positive breast cancer, early stage breast cancer, early stage prostate cancer. But as the cells themselves change and mutate to different forms as the cancer advances, so then the nutritional recommendations become different, and we start to want to suffocate the ability of the cells to replicate around the clock. and then therefore using supplements in the middle during the day and in the middle of the night. I think that's the major difference, is that and we find, we've been seeing studies and also based my treatment protocol and seeing that work more effectively when we suffocate the cancer cells replication, which chemotherapy can't do, because chemotherapy is a one-time shot of poison that can kill the cancer cells, but maybe not kill all of them. And then having some cells can still grow after that. This is ongoing continually. So we're doing this over a period of months and years, suffocating cancer cell replications with simple compounds that are good for you, that prevent cancer cells from replicating, right? And these simple compounds maybe are like the EGCG, these certains from green teas, and the curcumin complex is devised from turmeric. And so we're taking, and like raw garlic. So we're taking some of these substances and not just giving people to eat them in their diet, but to spread them out through the day. Like we're spreading out medications every 5 hours, and still when you get up and go to the bathroom in the middle of the night between 1 and 3 in the morning, take it then as well. So the cancer cells never get a chance where they're having the replication not being suppressed.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by the precision nutrition we've designed. We're modifying it to the person's condition as well. With the diet as well. And remarkably seeing really surprisingly powerful outcomes.
Can people come to the Eat to Live retreat with cancer? Can you treat them for cancer there, or do you suggest they go somewhere else first and just come there for nutritional excellence?
Well, it's not primarily a place where we're treating cancer patients, but it's primarily treat with food addiction and overweight and related comorbidities. But I do have cancer patients come here so they can, because when they first are getting onto the protocol, for many of them, doing the juicing and doing the sprouts and the salads and the supplements are overwhelming for them to like do at home until they really see what to do, even though I'm not saying coming to the retreat for the month, the treatment. This is where I object to these alternative cancer centers. You go to Mexico, you stay there 2 weeks, and they fly you home. And they're giving you therapies, which are dubious in any way. But so this is different. We're not expecting the person to be cured when they come to the retreat, but they could come here to learn the protocol, to see how we make the juice with bok choy and lettuce and a mixture of beet and carrot, and how we space out the supplements. So how to make the food and make the recipes. But you don't have to come to the retreat, obviously, to get this protocol. I teach it. I have, as you know, I have people who join my website and ask me questions, and they ask the Dr. Fuhrman. They could watch the video, they can communicate with me, they can get a book, they can read it. So I make it so people can get my advice over the internet where they don't have to come to the retreat. But some people obviously feel like, I just want to go there, spend a few months with you, and then I'll go home and replicate it when you go home. Because this is a long-term investment. It's not a quick fix treatment for cancer, right? We want a person to live this way now for years of their life.
Yeah, absolutely. And you had mentioned that what we ate in childhood and even what our mothers ate when they were pregnant with us will affect our future cancer risk. So is it really ever too late for somebody to adopt dietary excellence?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, that's the point. It's never too early because we don't know what our risk factors were from our childhood. So and that's why, people criticize me and think that I'm too radical as far as my nutritional recommendations are too excellent. I don't allow people to cheat that much. I don't allow people to use salt. I don't want people to use flours and have a diet be heavy in brown rice or white potato. I want to eat, greens and onions and mushrooms and berries and seeds right? So they say, well, why do you have to do it so perfect? And the answer is because for a lot of us, we don't know what damage has accumulated in our lives prior to our dietary changes. We haven't been excellent eaters in our childhood or since birth, most of us. And now when we switch to a diet with this degree of nutritional excellence in it, then we see the magic happen. And I always say that the money's in the last 5%. We see the same thing with people with high blood pressure and advanced heart disease. A lot of times, 90% compliance isn't good enough to really see the disease reverse itself and make the full recoveries, particularly when people have valvular problems in their heart or calcifications in their heart. We really need to move towards this type of higher degree of excellence. And I'm also saying to people that Our experience over the last 3 decades is we could make this high degree of dietary excellence taste so good, as you know as a chef, that they're not giving up flavor and enjoyment of eating when they're eating all these healthy mushrooms and salads and vegetable dishes with with a Thai curry sauce and all the orange cashew sesame dressings and all the. In other words, they're still able to make the diet taste delicious enough they don't feel deprived at all, even though it is very the diet, the degree of excellence is elevated, right?
Yes. One of the things I love the most about you is your love and promotion of vegetables. And I'm curious why it's important in general to eat not just raw, but also cooked vegetables, but even more important when somebody has cancer, to have both.
That's right. Our immune system is dependent mostly on our green vegetable consumption. And I'll say this simple point right now is that green vegetable consumption is the most important factor in governing our longevity. So if you could ask the person, what's the most important factor governing a person's length of life? And the answer is how much green vegetables they consume over their lifetime. So that's the most important thing. And there are 4 types so with no threshold effect, which means all these foods we're saying are so important to prevent cancer, like mushrooms and berries and pomegranates and wheat germ and flax seeds and scallions and broccoli sprouts, and I could keep going on and on with all these powerful anti-cancer foods, right? But the point here is that those foods have a threshold, which means once you have a quarter cup of mushrooms, you've gotten the maximum benefit. Once you have a quarter cup of tomato sauce, you're getting the maximum benefit. Once you have a tablespoon of wheat germ, you got it. Once you have a tablespoon of ground flax seeds, you got the benefit. Once you have taking a whole cup of flax seeds is not going to be better. It'll be worse for you, right? Because you expose yourself to too much cadmium or thallium. So we're talking here about getting a variety of foods in the right amount. So you have precision here with how much you're taking. But with regard to green vegetables, no threshold means that the more you eat, the better, and the more you take in, the better. And the reason why we add green vegetables cooked is it enables people to get more of the green vegetable compounds into their body and into their blood. So the ability of the cell to fight cancer has to do with the nutrient density of these phytonutrients in the cell, the concentration of the phytonutrients in the cell, in conjunction with the removal of toxins. So low level of toxicity and the high level of nutrient density in the cell, which means lowering body weight and to increase nutrient concentration in the tissues. And then we're talking about a high intake of all of these 4 types of green vegetables. So we have 2 basic types, the cruciferous vegetable and the non-cruciferous vegetable. And the cruciferous vegetable is the broccoli, cabbage, bok choy, kale, collards, watercress, arugula. And these are very, very important to take in raw and cooked. In the raw form, their myrosinase enzyme is intact, so it forms more ITCs in the mouth in the relation to how well you chew the vegetable. So I'm going to say that one more time, is that the most powerful anti-cancer substance in the diet are the ITCs formed in the isothiocyanates formed in the mouth when you're chewing raw cruciferous vegetables. And their amount you form in the mouth is proportional to how well you chew the vegetable and break open each cell. So if you eat a salad with arugula on top, or baby bok choy, or shredded cabbage, you're getting some ITCs from those foods. But if you chew it and swallow it the way most Americans eat, where they don't liquefy every mouthful, they're only going to get about 10% of the available anti-cancer compounds. So the better they chew, so we're training people to be so mindful to chew the salad up and mixing the lettuce with the arugula and the baby bok choy, whatever, to mix it and to focus. So you're getting both those compounds simultaneously, because lettuce gives you the richest source of sulfoquinavose, and we're getting the isothiocyanase, and chewing it with the mouth and mixing it with the bacteria between the teeth is going to form more nitric oxide and other beneficial anti-cancer compounds. But in any case, so that's the one type, is raw cruciferous vegetables chewed impeccably well. And the next type is cooked cruciferous vegetables. That means cooked broccoli, cooked cabbage, cooked bok choy, cooked Brussels sprouts, right? Because we're getting beneficial anti-cancer compounds from cooked vegetables, even when the myrosinase enzyme is deactivated by cooking, and usually with walking or cooking it partially, with the way we cook, we're not deactivating all the myrosinase. So we're increasing the amount that we can absorb, digest, and eat when we add both the raw and the cooked. And then we're eating raw and cooked non-cruciferous, like lettuce and like string beans and zucchini and artichokes and asparagus and all these types of all these green vegetables that are not cruciferous that are also rich in anti-cancer compounds, particularly sprouts and lettuce, right, which are really important for the bacterial milieu in the digestive tract, right? So and are rich in these cancer-fighting compounds. So that means I might have had a big salad with sprouts on top and arugula on top for lunch, which I chewed very well, as a major necessity to prevent and live longer and fight cancer. But now I've also had my dinner where I had the broccoli and the cabbage with the mushrooms and onions cooked with my Thai curry sauce or something, or with a mushroom Alfredo sauce. So I also have them cooked. And when you wok it, it's like partially cooked. When you blanch it, it's like partially cooked. So you're getting, and the partially cooking or cooking helps some nutrients to be absorbed better compared to totally raw. So even though cooking prevents the absorption of some nutrients, it enhances the absorption of other beneficial nutrients. So by having the combination of both raw and cooked, we maximize the nutrient exposure and we increase our ability to eat more green vegetables and more types of green vegetables.
That's great. Could you talk about how each Gbomb helps? Greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, seeds?
Sure. So we talked about, it's funny how that they all help synergistically by hitting one factor. For example, we know mushrooms are probably the most powerful aromatase inhibitors, which means they lower estrogen, which reduces the risk of breast and prostate cancer, of hormonally sensitive cancers, right? But you know what? Green vegetables also have some ability. Flax seeds have some ability, seeds have some ability, like flax and chia seeds. And even certain beans, like soybeans, have aromatase inhibiting effects too. So what I'm saying right now is that fixing the hormones to improve the estrogen, testosterone, and estrogen progesterone ratio occurs from eating the right foods, but the ability of mushrooms to have that powerful effect is enhanced when you eat the beans and the flax seeds and the green vegetables in your diet with the mushrooms. Now let's take the angiogenesis and the anti-angiogenic factors, which cancer cells can't replicate unless they get a blood supply. Cancer cells have to be fed, and the blood is the way they're fed. So when cancer cells replicate and grow, these cells that are abnormal secrete factors that are angiogenesis promoters, which tells the blood vessels to grow to allow the cancer cells to grow and spread. So cancer cells can't spread without promoting angiogenesis. And the most powerful substances that prevent angiogenesis, and there's no drugs that can do this as effective as mushrooms can, are mushrooms and mushroom variety. And even using mushroom powders, we use mushrooms in the diet. We advise people they actually buy from us these bags of wild forest collected mushrooms, and they also use mushroom powders, like the most powerful anti-cancer mushrooms mixed into a powder. So yeah, we have these mushrooms because these mushrooms have the most powerful suppress the angiogenic promoters secreted by cancer cells, right? But now we find that the cruciferous vegetables have the flax seeds, the onions, and the other foods that you use in conjunction with the mushrooms magnify synergistically the anti-angiogenic effects of the mushrooms. So it's the entire dietary portfolio that's put together, not, by using scientific studies to show what foods have the most powerful effect at preventing cancer cells to replicate, and what foods are most effective in making people live longer who have cancer. And then putting a dietary portfolio together that includes all these foods simultaneously that allows these foods to have the most powerful effect. So even though we might say eating a variety of mushrooms has the most powerful effect to suppress angiogenesis and estrogen, yes, but you don't get the maximum benefit from the mushroom's ability to prevent angiogenesis until you also include the other dietary factors mixed with it. And then we see, that's where we're talking more about precision nutrition, right? Because you had the raw cruciferous, you had your sprouts, including broccoli sprouts, you had the high levels of isothiocyanates, you had the onion compounds, the organosulfide compounds from onions. We can go into each food individually, but I'm trying to give a picture here that is when you include all these foods simultaneously is when you magnify the effect of each individual food. Like there was a study, for example, on women who had breast cancer. They followed them for 10 years. And they found that those who had 1/3 of a milligram of lignin from flaxseed or from other lignin-containing seeds had a 71% decreased risk of dying over that 10-year period compared to women not eating lignins, right? Now, that they just had a little bit of lignin. By the way, a teaspoon of ground flax has 7 milligrams of lignin. This is only 1/3 of a milligram of lignin. They gave them the wrong dose. They didn't take enough lignins. They didn't have the variety of foods. They didn't eat all the cruciferous vegetables and the mushrooms and the onions. They just were measuring lignin content, right? And it still reduced risk of cancer by 71%. And they did it after the people had a diagnosis of cancer, which of course makes it, some of those cancers could have been very advanced at that point. And it was still effective. The point is that people don't have accurate representation of how powerful precision nutrition can be to both prevent and be effective in treating or extending lifespan in people who have cancer. They have no concept of how powerful this is because the studies usually only focus on one individual element and don't put all those beneficial elements synergistically together in one dietary portfolio. Did you follow me? So we have the studies on women who have breast cancer who are with cruciferous green vegetables. We have showing their reduced risk of death goes down by 50%. We have studies with people taking mushrooms showing so we're looking at studies showing how beneficial they are individually. But we have almost no studies I have clinical experience. This is one of the things we're trying to do with raising funds for nutritional research, with the Nutritional Research Foundation, is actually putting together studies where you took the whole protocol of all these anti-cancer substances and foods into one dietary protocol, right?
You even have a special soup that you call your anti-cancer soup that uses most of the Gbombs, I think everything except the berries.
Yes, and the reason, let me tell you why I call it the anti-cancer soup, because that's a really good thing to point out. And because you can use the same technique, and the reason we call it an anti-cancer soup, you can make it the same technique to cook foods in general. Okay, the one reason is that the myrosinase enzyme in green cruciferous vegetables is heat sensitive. So what we do is we take the foods highest in glucosinolates and myrosinase, like mustard greens, turnip greens, collard greens, and broccoli rabe, right? We take those greens that are bitter, greens that don't even taste that great if you eat them plain, and we blend them in the blender while they're cold, cold blending them, ladle a little soup liquid in there and blend them into your puree before they're cooked. So we're going to make this green puree before we heat them, before they're cooked. We blend it up so the chemical reaction occurs in the blender because the myrosinase enzyme is in the wall of the cell in a little capsule it's usually broken open by chewing, but now it's broken open by the blades of the blender and allows the chemical reaction to form the ITCs in the blender. And then you pour it into the soup to cook. See, had you added the vegetables to the soup and allowed them to be cooked before they were blended, it would have deactivated the enzyme in the cell walls. So now when you chewed the vegetables or blended the vegetables later, you wouldn't form the ITCs. So we cold blend the vegetables and then we add it to the soup as a puree. Then I take the dirty blender and I put in leeks, onions, scallions, garlic. We take the allium family, which produce all these powerful organosulfide compounds. And the enzyme in the allium family is called alliinase, Alliinase, alliinase. It's the only word with 2 L's and 2 I's, whereas you get triple points for Scrabble. Don't forget that word alliinase, Alliinase. is the enzyme that makes your eyes tear when you cut the onion. When it's raw, it's forming the sulfenic acid and other beneficial anti-cancer compounds are formed in high amounts as you chop open the cell, and the chemical reactions occur on your table as you're cutting. So we don't want to put the onion in big pieces in the soup because it'll deactivate the enzyme. We want to put it in the blender and allow this sulfenic acid and anti-cancer compounds to form while it's raw and to form or alliinase puree or an onion puree. So we'll take the leeks, we'll put the whole stem of the leek, the whole scallion, the whole onion in the blender, and we'll take a little ladle, a little soup liquid in there from the top of the soup so it can cream and make an onion puree, and keep your head back from that blender and stand away for it. Come back and shut it off because it'll make your eyes tear. And then we pour that cold compound that hasn't been cooked into the soup. So we form the chemical compounds that would never have been formed to that level of that degree of effectiveness if we cooked the onion or the leeks first, right? So now we can cook it. And the water-based cooking at 100 degrees Celsius, right? Cooking a soup does not deactivate the anti-cancer compounds that were formed in the blender. And that's why it's called the anti-cancer. That's why we're using those techniques in anti-cancer soup. We're teaching people how to make the soup to maintain the anti-cancer properties of the foods that you utilize in the soup. So you can put chopped onion in there too, but you have pureed onion in there. And we have the beans and the split peas and the mushrooms. Now, mushrooms you just chop up and add to the soup. And we're adding various types of mushrooms, both dried and fresh, including shiitake mushrooms and other types of mushrooms, and maybe a bag of dried mushrooms, because we're trying to go after mushroom variety, not just put one type of mushroom in the soup. Those are some of the features of the anti-cancer soup. And then the other thing is that we're not using like a vegetable broth base. We're actually making fresh vegetable juice to make the base. So I utilize for my people with both autoimmune disease and cancer, because we don't want to take 6 to 12 months to bring the level of nutrient density high in their tissues, excuse me, to enhance the level of cellular nutrition to be much higher, because it's the cell nutrition that enables the body's cells to repair broken DNA cross-links that are creating cancer, right? And methylation defects that are creating cancer. So we use a juice that has 3 parts to it: 1/3 cruciferous, 1/3 carrot and beet, and 1/3 lettuce or other types of raw greens. Could be some, but in any case, so it was 1/3 lettuce, and the green cruciferous is mostly bok choy, mostly because bok choy is easy to juice and has more liquid in it than other greens do. And then the carrot and beet. So by drinking this juice, maybe even twice a day, maybe even 6 to 8 ounces twice a day on the juice. So they make the juice on Monday, they make enough for Monday twice a day and Tuesday twice a day. Then they make another juice on Wednesday, and they make enough for Wednesday twice a day and Thursday twice a day. So maybe they're making juice 3 times a week in enough volume, because a person's appetite is usually not enough to get all these nutrients into their body, to be concentrated enough to get their levels of nutrients in their tissues high enough, quick enough. Like, I don't have to juice because I'm eating healthily this way for years. But we measure the level of carotenoids in the cells, right? We measure the level of nutrients in the cells, and then we see, well, how fast can we build up those levels high enough? And the juicing helps us bring the levels of nutrients higher over time, because we don't want to take 6 or 10 or 12 months to get the levels up there. So we're juicing so we're blending the juice, and then we add the juice to the base of the soup, because you asked me the anti-cancer soup. So the juice, the soup may have, let's say, carrot and beet juice, or carrot, beet, and onion juice, or carrot, beet, tomato, onion juice in the base of the soup with water. So my soup base is half water and half fresh squeezed vegetable juice. And I'm also juicing and drinking that with breakfast and dinner to enhance the person's level of nutrient concentration in their tissues. And of course, doing everything else we're talking about too.
Yeah, thank you. One of the live viewers is commenting that they believe that in the past you recommended, or not maybe recommended, but agreed that maybe a small amount of animal products in the diet was okay, maybe not optimum. And they're wondering, if somebody has cancer, would you suggest no animal products whatsoever?
Well, thanks for the question. It was never the case that I'm recommending a small amount of animal products for a person's health. That was not the case. it was in the book Eat to Live. I allowed people to have a small amount of animal products, so the book wouldn't be seen as a total vegan book. So I'd allow people to make dietary improvements without making a choice up front whether they want to be a vegan or not. So I wanted to allow people to say, yes, you can do a nutritarian diet and not be 100% vegan. Do it to this degree and still have a little bit of animal product in your diet if you don't want to give up animal products. But it's better to do it to that degree and not give up animal products than to do it not at all. So many people, when faced with the challenge of giving up everything, will say, I'm not going to do it at all then, right? So yes, but if you ask me the direct question, do I think it's better to be 100% vegan or to use like animal products once a week or so? Then the answer would be, well, I don't know, but I have to go to what science is available on that subject and see what the evidence says. And the evidence we have from the Seventh-day Adventist Health Study 2 demonstrates that even once a week serving of animal products does increase risk, particularly of cardiovascular death. So, and most likely of, now I particularly would be advising a 100% vegan diet for a person with a cancer diagnosis, because we know animal protein, particularly the amino acid methionine, can be promoting cancer, can allow cancer cell replication. Remember I talked earlier in this discussion we're having that we want to suffocate the cancer cell's ability to replicate. And we suffocate that replication with these compounds, these curcumin compounds from turmeric and green tea and mushroom extracts. We suffocate them so they can't replicate. Likewise, by keeping the protein low, it makes them also harder to replicate, which means that we're not only avoiding all animal products, we're also avoiding plant products that are concentrated in protein, that are too high in protein. You don't want to take a protein powder supplement with a cancer, and we even will restrict soy and hemp seeds and Mediterranean pine nuts because they're so high in protein. We're going to, and even total bean intake will keep to a half a cup a day or less. A half a cup a day of beans will particularly will restrict soybeans to small amounts and restrict the higher protein nuts like hemp seeds to a smaller amount too, because we want the protein to be moderately restricted. Not so restricted that a person is going to get malnutrition and not get and suppress immune function where IGF-1 gets too low. But we're moderating it to the perfect level where it's too low to allow cancer cell replication, to allow cancer cells to flourish, but not so low that the person gets muscle wasting and immune system to interfere with immune function. So you know that this is the art here, is that even we know that that plant-based diets lower IGF-1 and fasting lowers IGF-1, but if it gets too low, if IGF-1 gets too low, that could suppress immunity to a degree to allow it to be worse. So it's knowing at what degree of suppression is the right level where we don't overly suppress immune function. So it's moderate protein restriction, and we do that, yes, where animal protein would be the worst thing a person could do with cancer.
Well, I don't even want to tell you what they're recommending I eat at the cancer center I go to and what I should eat specifically to gain weight, because you would just have smoke would come out of your ears.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really,
yeah. I'll tell you
we're dealing with people who really have a kindergarten level of nutritional exposure, right? They haven't spent their, anyway, it's just very frustrating.
They wanted me to gain 10 pounds, which I did. And I ate the things that you would recommend, healthy fats like nuts and seeds and avocado. But they wanted me to put coconut oil in my coffee. And I said, I don't drink coffee. And they go, well, just take a spoonful of it every day.
Well, they're not the people you should be asking for or following the nutrition recommendations of, which you know that, I know.
I wasn't asking, they were telling,
Yeah,
so
right,
believe me,
right,
but
right.
yeah. So
You're asking a dietitian working in a cancer session who to how to eat with a disease is like, anyway.
Well, I should have said, well, why don't I just go to the vending machine in the infusion center? I'm sure those snacks would be appropriate. Anyway, you got to have a sense of humor. So,
And you know what I'm saying, that obviously the concentration of nutrients in your cells are enhanced with weight loss, because the larger you get, the more it dilutes, the more fat you put on your body. Fat cells sequester nutrients away from the cancer cells. So any rapid weight gain isn't going to be muscle tissue, it's going to be fat. And fat and weight may be helpful, a person under, so we can get into that, but it's not worth it. We're talking about people with chemotherapy, because chemotherapy can damage digestive cells in the digestive tract. So now you can't digest food. So they're seeing people, they're damaging because chemotherapy damages cells that are replicating. And we replenish the cells that line the digestive tract every 3 to 7 days, every 3 to 6 days, let's say. So that's the fastest growing cells in the body. So when you take chemo, you damage the lining of the digestive tract, and now you can't digest food well. And so they want people eating more food and keeping fat. So when they can't eat food, they're not going to waste away. So it's confusing, but they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, in your combat cancer and autoimmune disease course, which I'll link below, and it's a wonderful course, and you can do it at your own pace. In the first module, I believe I heard you say that it's not so much the sugar, oil, and salt that cause cancer on their own, but the fact that they stimulate overeating, particularly of unhealthy foods that cause an unfavorable weight, which increases our risk. And I've since learned that there's at least 13 cancers that are specifically linked to excess weight. Can you speak to that?
Well, the one thing we know is that extra body fat suppresses immune function, allowing all types of cancer to worsen, even skin cancer from sun exposure, from radiation exposure. And by the way, we talked about, common causes of cancer that are not food related, right? Like radiation, radon, pollution, all these things that are not food related. But what I'm saying right now is that food can the healthy diet can help you resist and retard the damage from those non-food related causes, even skin cancer. So even skin, but in any case, we were talking, what we was just talking about? I got,
About in the course, you said that it isn't so much that the sugar and oil and salt directly
right.
causes cancer.
Right, we're talking about body fat, yeah. So we're talking that as the body fat increases, it suppresses immunity and deactivates the natural killer T cells, the body's ability to recognize abnormal cell surfaces, so the body can recognize a cancer cell and attack it and remove it. So as the body fat increases, it suppresses the body's ability to reverse, seek out, and destroy abnormal cells and repair tissue. And we produce more, it creates a pro-inflammatory state. So let's just go be more specific. And we're talking here about a male's body fat above 15% and a woman's body fat above 25%. So a male's body fat should be between 10 and 15%, and a female's body fat should probably be between 18 and 25%, those are a normal range of body fat, right? So as you go to 20, for a female, let's say, you go from 27, 28, 30, 34, 36% body fat. As body fat gets up into the 30% and above, you get more and more suppression of immune function, including increased risk of pneumonia and almost all types of cancers. Now, that body fat, which suppresses immunity, also has the effect to sequester nutrients away from cells that would be important for those, and sequester nutrients away from cells that are important for immune function, defense against cancer, and nutrients in the cells that enable the cell to repair itself. So in the machinery of each cell is equipment to repair broken DNA crosslinks and methylation defects that cumulatively could create cancer. So we can take away that machinery of the cell to repair itself as we increase body fat and we're overweight. So that's where, even if you go to a cancer center telling you to gain more weight, they could be pushing your body fat up to an unfavorable level that can allow the cancer cells to get worse. Even though they might make you do better in response to chemo, with you did not lose weight with chemo as much, which they're trying to do, they're still going to, if they, their general bias on all Americans being overweight, you're not losing weight that fast, because it's confusing for them, because as the cancer gets more aggressive, it causes more weight loss, and they think they're opposing the aggressiveness of the cancer by opposing that weight loss due to the aggressiveness of the cancer, but it's still not the right way to think. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to create a biochemical environment to stop the aggressive replication of cancer cells, which will then slow down or stop the weight loss and allow the person to maintain an ideal weight. So we're doing it completely differently, and we're doing it with high nutrient concentration, not by eating food to make you gain more weight. It's completely the wrong direction. So yes, sugar, oil, and salt, well, they are appetite stimulants, but they also have pro-inflammatory effects. So salt eating is linked to increased risk of autoimmune condition. It's increased risk to stomach cancer. Oil consumption, especially heated oils, are carcinogenic in direct proportion to the degree the oil has been cooked or heated, what temperature it's heated at, and how long it's being heated for. So when you go to a fast food restaurant and you're eating fried, chicken in heated oil or French fries in heated oil that's been heated for hours, you're eating a food that's highly carcinogenic. It's not just fattening. And then sugar, when you're eating sugar, sweeteners you're also stripping the body of nutrients to convert that sugar into energy. Your body utilizes micronutrients and phytochemicals and antioxidants to convert that. And if you're not supplying it in your diet, you're reducing the nutrient density in your tissues, increasing risk of cancer directly from eating processed foods like white flour and sugar too.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm curious where you stand on alcohol in general for health, but especially for people with cancer.
Well, remember, first of all, alcohol is carcinogenic, even in small amounts. So just because there are more powerful, harmful things you can do, like eating donuts, doesn't make alcohol maybe less of a risk than eating donuts, but it's still a risk factor, right? So it'd be so the question is why should a person partake in substances that are self-destructive for recreation? And does that give you a better quality of life? So the question is, are you happier, healthier, more loving, more feeling, more emotionally stable? Are you enjoying your life more when you're recreating with croissants, bagels, donuts, pastrami, bacon, and alcohol? These things are harmful, they're addictive, and are you enjoying your life more? And the answer is no, you're not. That it's just they become addicting to people, and their brain becomes hooked on these things because they're brain-altering chemicals. And you get hooked to this idea of brain-altering chemicals, which then cumulatively, not just the alcohol alone, but mixed with other brain-altering chemicals, like sugar, right, is a brain-altering chemical, and the high caloric rush from oils is a brain-altering chemical. These brain-altering chemicals in total age your brain and make you lose your memory and lose your intelligence and make you more highly angered and irritable and unhappy and brain fog. So now what I'm saying is this idea people have that recreating with dangerous substances are better for their health and happiness because it makes them more relaxed, more able to enjoy their life, is not true. It actually makes them more agitated, more irritated, more angered, and interferes with brain health. And it makes them actually lose their ability over time to be compassionate and feeling and appropriately emotional to the world around them. And they're not happier because of it. So I'm discouraging that. I'm discouraging people from thinking that their joy comes from using the little hit you get from using these brain-altering chemicals or brain-altering foods, right?
Yeah. In the course, you mentioned that chemotherapy doesn't work well for slow-growing tumors, but that it might work good for fast-growing tumors. So how does one determine the growth of their tumor? I've always wondered for myself how I'm supposed to calculate the doubling time because it seemed to take about 2 years for me.
Yes. So, that's a complicated question, but it's an important question. Important thing to keep in mind is that, I've spoken to so many hundreds of oncologists over the years, and when they hear my message and they learn it, they reveal the fact of how frustrated they are in their careers, that the chemotherapy might cost, $50,000 to $100,000 and extend a person's lifespan, with a slow-growing cancer, 3 to 6 months. The power is very limited what they can do with slow-growing cancers, because slow-growing cancers don't unravel their DNA wide enough to be damaged by chemo, and it doesn't kill all the cells. With a fast-growing, more aggressive cancer that's more likely to kill you, then the cancer cells replicating more rapidly, exposing its DNA wider, and is more susceptible to chemo. So the more dangerous the cancer is, and the more rapidly it's advancing, the more appropriate chemotherapy would be. That's why a premenopausal, aggressive, estrogen-negative breast cancer, which could kill a person relatively, in 6 to 12 months, then chemotherapy is indicated and going to be more effective. But a slow-growing estrogen-positive garden variety breast cancer that's going to take 5 or 10 years to kill a person, you're not going to see a major lifespan enhancement by taking chemotherapy, even if it's given. And because there's a large percentage of overdiagnosis and misdiagnosis from mammograms, so people who are diagnosed with cancer who never have cancer, they're receiving chemo that can now hurt them and cause other cancers to develop from the chemo. And overall, the effect, they're weakened by the chemo, because what I'm saying right now is I generally do not recommend chemotherapy for the most common types of breast cancers, because they're growing too, and the most common types of prostate cancer, because they don't give you a good bang for the buck. Quality of life goes down and potential for increased lifespan is so minimal. And nutrition is so much more powerful. So what I'm also saying here, that when you're comparing chemotherapy to precision nutrition in a slow-growing cancer, it's a no-brainer. You have such much power with regard for nutritional intervention, and virtually almost no where the effect of the chemo is relatively worthless for common cancers. There was a recent study came out like last month on prostate cancer showing when men get diagnosed with and treated for prostate cancer, overall their quality, if they combine their quality of life and their longevity scores and puts together and go over the actual benefits, they find that most people consider the benefit to be negative of having prostate cancer diagnosed and treated. The overall effect on their life is negative, not positive. So it depends. I still think that most of the alternative therapies are relatively ineffective compared to nutritional excellence and precision nutrition. So going to these alternative cancer centers and getting red light therapy, ozone intravenously, or heat treatment, or potentiated insulin treatments, whatever all these alternative methods are relatively ineffective compared to just straight doing the great diet with the right supplements. It's long-term and with the right, combination of, we're using also anti-cancer herbal products too, that we're adding, is more effective than these alternative therapies that people use, like, sound therapy and light therapies, and what do they do? Ultrasound guided phototherapy. There's all types of things that they're doing. But in any case, I'm saying nutrition is more effective.
Great. Thank you. You talked about exercise, engaging in regular exercise in your combat cancer and autoimmune disease course. And I'm curious, why is exercise so important when fighting disease, especially diseases like cancer?
Well, the whole holistic lifestyle is important. So whether it's and a person even a person with cancer can do some exercise, even if it's getting up and down from a chair, right? Even if it's using a 3-pound weight in their hand, because when you activate the muscles, it helps you with growth hormone and digestive function and immune function. So getting enough sleep, right? Getting some movement or exercise, having a positive emotional state, and looking to enjoy your life, and actually there are actually techniques where you can help reduce the fear. So cancer itself is a negative because it makes people live with fear, and fear itself is not good for your health, right? So continuing to live and enjoy your life, and let's just say it this way, is that we all have our weaknesses and strengths, right? And life is not permanent. Our objective for all of us is the same. We want to get as much enjoyment and pleasure out of each day as we can. Being alive is a gift that we're given. And whether we're alive for 40 years or 80 years, we have to fully enjoy the gift we're given. And whether you live 75 years or 85 years is not the most important thing as enjoying the amount of years we have to be on the planet, right? So we chose the sperm and the egg got together, and it formed us, the unique individuals we are, right? And we're lucky to be here to enjoy life. And it's not forever. It's for a very limited period of time. And some of us will have a little more life and a little less life, but we keep in good health to enjoy whatever life, whatever time we have today to enjoy. And as long as you can enjoy your life for the days that you're living, that's what your purpose is, right? To be compassionate, to do good in the world, and to get as much pleasure from the gift of life we've been given. And I've seen many people with cancer outlive the people who were coming to give them, console them, right? They're the people who had the cancer because the cancer sparked in them a desire to live healthier and do better and to live their life with more, with more of a mission and a passion that it helped them live longer than people who don't have cancer, right? So we're all in this thing. We're all doing this together. We're all supporting each other, and we're all trying to do the best we can. And, most people have some cancer cells in their body and have some cancer, and and we're all doing this together. We're trying to enjoy our lives. We're trying to do regular exercise, get enough sleep, reduce the stress from our life by not letting our egos make our lives be in competition where other people's thoughts and can hurt us. Other people cannot hurt us. Other people's words cannot hurt us because we're feeling good about our ability to be compassionate to others, and we're trying to enjoy our life. And our happiness comes from our emotions towards others in the world around us, not from other people's emotions towards us. Our happiness comes from our emotions inside us. So we're all together trying to support each other to be the best versions of ourselves, to be the happiest versions of ourselves we can be. And how long, if I live 10 years longer or 10 years shorter, it's not the main thing as being able to be healthy and enjoy my life.
Amen. Thank you. Do you think you can share any stories of hope about any of your patients who've survived cancer? And I'm curious, did they have anything in common, like maybe a sense of humor?
Wow, that's a good question to ask, about sense of, I think what they had in common was they had a positive, enthusiastic that they wanted to do everything possible to keep themselves healthy and get well. And they were willing to do this, to do everything. And they were doing it enthusiastically, and it gave them tremendous hope. So I think that's what they had in common, that they had the hope and the optimism that this would work for them. And yes, I gave the example of that one lady with ovarian cancer, but I have to say I have 4 other people with advanced ovarian cancer. One of my people, Karen, runs a vegan podcast, very popular vegan podcast. She had ovarian cancer she recovered from. There's a lot of well-known person, a lot of people that have, and I have people with metastatic breast cancer who are completely non-detectable any cancer anymore, including one woman who had a positive bone scan with mets to the bones that completely went away and disappeared. I had to repeat her bone scan twice because I was so shocked that it went away. You know what I mean? Their cancer just went away. In other words, I'm talking about people with relatively advanced cancers that totally, resolve themselves. And many women with stage 3 and stage 4 breast cancer who have now been living 10, 15 years later, where obviously that the risk of that happening without doing this kind of interventions would have never occurred, including women. I've had several women with lymphoma that reversed itself with no intervention, no radiation, no chemo, just a diet. I have one woman where right in front of my eyes, she did the diet, she lost weight, and her lymphoma diagnosed with a biopsy. It was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but it was already, in her neck, in her groin, in her, in her thighs. And the masses just shrunk up and disappeared, and the lymphoma just went away. So yes, I've had, that's my, even though I'm a board-certified family doctor and not an oncologist, I've seen a large percentage of people with cancer, and the outcomes have been shocking to me of how positive the outcomes have been compared to people getting more conventional therapies. That doesn't mean every person, is going to get rid of their cancer, to be cured from it, but we know that they have a chance of being cured, and they're certainly going to survive longer and enjoy and have a better life doing a program that looks at their health in a holistic fashion. So yes, these people they dove in with both hands. They didn't complain about it. It gave them hope, enthusiasm, and they did it. And in so many cases, it was like magic.
That's going to be hard for me not complain. I'm Jewish, but I love what you said. You have any great jokes, by the way? I have one for you, Dr. Fuhrman. I've told it on the show before, but I asked for people that didn't believe in prayer if they wanted to support me to send in jokes. And I'm getting some good ones. And you might know this one, but I think it'll give you a chuckle. What's the difference, because you're a doctor, you probably know, between an oral thermometer and a rectal thermometer?
What? What's the difference?
The taste.
All right. So, should we tell you a quick jokes before we wrap this up, or is it too late?
Absolutely. And I just have one final question, but yes.
Okay. The joke first, or the question first?
The joke first and then the final question.
It's a long joke, though. Okay. Here's the joke. Because you know how doctors are. They're so arrogant, telling people what to do all the time, right? So a person goes to a doctor's office and he says, doctor, just look in my throat, a quick visit because I have a sore throat. And want to just check it looks okay? The receptionist says, you're going to have to wait because the doctor's, has to see patients. He can't take people out of turn. So finally, he takes them back after a 20-minute wait. And the nurse says, okay, get undressed, sit on the edge of the table, and I'll come in and take a look at you and look at your throat. The doctor will be in here to look at you. He says, I just have a throat issue and a cough and a mild sore throat. I don't need to get undressed. It's freezing in here and sit on the edge of the table. I don't need a whole body exam. Can't he just come in and look at me? She says, nope, if you want to be seen, he's got to see you. He's got to do a total exam on you. So you're going to have to get undressed. So he gets undressed, shivering, freezing at the end of the table. No doctor. 20 minutes, no doctor comes by. He's still freezing nude at the end of the table. So he finally gets fed up and he gets up above the table and opens the door, peeks his head out, and he sees a guy across the hall, also nude, sitting at the end of the table. But this guy has a little cardboard box right on his lap. And he says to the guy, I'm here 20 minutes nude, freezing my butt off, and I just have a sore throat. It's crazy. And the other guy says, I'm just here to deliver this package.
It's fantastic, Dr. Fuhrman. I think I'm going to ask every guest that this is how we're going to have to end with a joke. Thank you so much. Dr. Fuhrman, I just really have one more question for you. And you've kind of said it, but maybe you can just, what's the word when you do something consolidated? Yeah. So what message of hope would you share with someone currently facing a cancer diagnosis?
I would say that you could have many pleasurable years of life in front of you. And it's your job to get the most pleasure and enjoyment from your life possible. We're not going to live, we're all going to pass away someday. And you may live longer than me, or I may live longer than you. We never know what's going to happen. We can get hit by a car tomorrow, or I can get whatever can happen. We can die in our sleep, whatever, of a hemorrhagic stroke. But whatever the problem is we have a job to get to enjoy our life as much as we possibly can every single day, and take good care of our health and be grateful for every day we're alive.
Well, thank you. And Dr. Fuhrman, I'm very grateful for you. Thank you so much and happy.
Thank you too.
Thank you. And thank you all of you for watching day one of Thriving in the Face of Cancer. I want you to know that wherever you are in your cancer journey, as long as you're still breathing, I believe there's still hope and that you too can thrive even in the face of cancer. Tune in tomorrow at noon Pacific time for day 2 of Thriving in the Face of Cancer with Dr. William Lee. And remember, everywhere you go, leave a trace.